Welcome back, folks, to another Archetype review. I'm Frizz, and today we're going to be going over the Vigilante archetype that was released in the Advanced Player's Guide. The Vigilante is a fascinating archetype that is focused around one particular idea: being a goddamn superhero, secret identity and all. As this is a pretty out there idea that might not fit with a lot of different campaigns, this archetype does have the uncommon trait. Talk it out with your party before you make a Vigilante. It will definitely change up how the game plays. A lot of the fun of playing a Vigilante, in my mind, comes from playing one in an urban environment, and you'll probably get the most out of that character concept if you stay in that area. To use adventure paths as a reference point for what kind of campaigns I feel would work really well with a Vigilante, APs like Agents of Edgewatch and Curse of the Crimson Throne stay mostly within the same city for the entire stretch of the campaign, where APs like Iron Fang Invasion and Rise of the Runelords involve a lot of traveling and staying in wilderness sort of environments, so it is a bit harder to fit a Vigilante into those types of games. If you do manage to fit a Vigilante into a party though, you'll have a ton of fun. I'll also point out that an all-Vigilante party using the free archetype rules would make for an amazing campaign hook. Anyway, let's just jump right into things. The Vigilante dedication is pretty complex, as it gives you the main ability of this entire archetype that you're here for: your two dual identities. Now you have two identities that have their own names, alignments, and abilities. One of these identities is your social identity, and is who society at large knows you to be. The other is your Vigilante identity, who is probably feared just as much as they are respected. As neither of these identities are lies, they can't be too different, so your alignments have to be with one step of each other, and also your alignments have to qualify for all of your class features. Like, if you're a champion paladin, you have to be lawful good to actually be able to use your abilities. Now, clearly, this class feature isn't going to be all that fun if it's pretty easy to tell that your two identities are the same person. So, it also makes it much more difficult for people to figure out that there is a link between these identities. Other creatures only get a chance to roll perception to determine the link between your two identities if they are specifically trying to figure out your other identity. Additionally, whenever they make this check, they make it against a DC of 20 plus your deception modifier, rather than your normal deception DC, meaning that it's 10 higher, which is way, way better. This makes it much more likely that you're going to be able to hold on to your secret. Also, I forgot to mention it earlier, but you have to be trained in deception to take the Vigilante archetype. I feel like it's pretty implied due to the entire concept of keeping up to entirely separate identities. You have to be good at lying to do that, but I feel like I should also say it. Changing from one identity to another is also important, and it takes 1 minute to do so, though if you do change in front of an individual, then it gets very easy for them to link your two identities, so only do it in front of people that you really trust. Also, since the transformation between your identities takes more than just a physical alteration, you can't use magic to help speed up your changing, but there is a feat at a higher level that you can take that'll help you with that. To give a little bit more of a meaning or separation between your Vigilante and social identities, certain abilities will have the social or Vigilante trait, both in this archetype, and it also applies all these traits to all of your normal class feats. Most of your combat abilities from both your class and this archetype will have the Vigilante trait, meaning that using them while out on the town in your social identity could help people figure out who you truly are. Bruce Wayne doesn't go around throwing batarangs around because that would be a dead giveaway that he's Batman. So, generally, if an ability has the Vigilante trait, you don't want to use it in your social identity because it will, help people connect the dots. Same way, if something has the social trait, you don't want to use it in your Vigilante identity because then, again, that will help people connect the dots. When it really comes down to it though, I do recommend asking your GM how they want to apply these traits. It's perfectly reasonable that your social identity could have certain abilities, or that they could be common enough that they don't risk breaking your cover. After all, Clark Kent still looks pretty ripped, so it's understandable if he could, lift up something or have some basic self-defense skills, as those could just be waved off as long as Clark succeeded on his deception check to lie that it was just him taking self-defense classes where he learned how to throw a good punch. It's all up to you though, and writing down rules to cover this type of stuff never really works very well because it's always going to be specific to your game. So whatever it comes down to, it just has to be something that you're comfortable with in your game. The Vigilante dedication is somewhat simple in what it gives you, it's just that how that actually interacts with the rest of the game is where the complexity arises. When it comes down to it, it just gives you two separate identities that are really hard to link together, which is exactly what you are here to this archetype to get. So, yeah. The Hidden Magic feat becomes available at level 4, and it can really help you out depending on what your social identity in particular is, assuming that you meet the prerequisite of being an expert in either Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Religion. If your social identity is someone generally weak or poor, then it can be a dead giveaway that something is a little bit off if you carry around half a dozen powerful magical items at a time. You know, it's not very normal for a common laborer to be carrying around like a +2 striking dagger. That's just a bit out of whack. Hidden Magic allows for you to tweak your magical items every day during your preparations to appear as non-magical. Now, any spellcaster that uses Detect Magic or Read Aura must succeed at a perception check against your Deception DC to realize that they're actually magical. This can actually be really helpful for your social identity, but it can also be useful for your Vigilante identity, since nothing hurts stealthing more than having someone cast Detect Magic when you're trying to, sneak up on them. It's a bit of a dead giveaway if all of a sudden there's a bunch of new magic around that they were not aware of previously. Additionally, this is only a skill feat, making it way easier to pick up and a lot more affordable. The Minion Guise feat isn't going to be useful for everyone, but for those that it can benefit, it can be pretty helpful. You have to be an expert in deception to grab it, and you also have to have an animal companion or familiar. But then you basically just get a social identity for your minion. Now, people won't be able to link your identities together due to any allies that you have. It's also only a skill feat, which makes it far easier to get access to. Now you don't have to worry about your animal companion being a dead giveaway whenever you have it with you, which ideally is going to be pretty often. Vigilantes also get access to Quick Draw at level 4, which is a really great feat that allows you to draw a weapon and strike with it in the same turn. It's great action economy, and it really helps out whenever you're getting ambushed. Although as a Vigilante, you probably want to be aiming to be the ambusher most of the time, but in situations where you cannot be the ambusher, then this makes it substantially safer. Also, if you're using throwing weapons or just a variety of different types of weapons, this makes it much easier to switch up what weapon you're using. I don't have a lot more to say really, because it's Quick Draw. It's really simple and it's really good. Safe House is a really fascinating feat, especially for level 4, since it improves as you level up. To start with, you have a place to hide from the world now. You get a single 10-foot cube that is either its own structure or a part of a larger structure, like a hidden room. Inside of this room, everyone inside gets the effect of the non-detection spell, allowing them to avoid any kind of magic that tries to find them. You get to use your deception modifier as your counteract modifier for anyone that tries to, access anyone inside. This is great for Vigilantes especially, as, at some point, your Vigilante identity is probably going to make some enemies, and those enemies will probably try and find out where you sleep. Also, while a single 10-foot cube does seem really limiting, and it is really limiting, it increases in size every single time you increase your proficiency in deception. You can have 4 10-foot cubes if you're an expert, 8 10-foot cubes if you're a master, and 16 if you're legendary. Eventually you can comfortably house your entire party in there if you really want. Also, it takes a week of downtime to move it somewhere else, but it doesn't cost you any money. Social Purview is a great feat for allowing you to have a larger effect on the game in your social identity. Normally, almost all of your abilities are probably going to have the Vigilante trait, meaning that you don't actually have a lot of things that you can do in your social identity. Social Purview changes that up, allowing you to get a whole archetype dedication that all of the feats from that archetype get this social trait. This represents something that your social identity is known to do, and gives you a lot of abilities that you can now use if you ever get trapped in a combat situation in your social identity. Using them in your Vigilante identity does risk giving away your true nature, though. You can use most archetypes for this, though, but I personally recommend something that isn't like super explicitly related to combat, since most social identities aren't known to be very combat savvy people, but it's up to you if your social identity fits that. Startling Appearance is the only level 6 feat that a Vigilante gets access to, and it is rather intriguing. It is a single action that you can only use whenever you are completely unnoticed by a creature. This means that even if you hide in combat, you can't use this, as they still know that you're around somewhere. It's only ever going to be useful once in combat as your opening move, since once you use this, everyone is certainly going to know that something is there at the minimum. You can make a strike against your target, and they are flat-footed against the strike just like normal. If you hit, then they remain flat-footed for the rest of your turn, and are frightened 1 or frightened 2 if you critically hit them. This is a lot of fun, though I do wish that the effect was a little bit stronger, considering how it's limited to maybe once per combat. Maybe the flat-footed either gave its benefit to your allies, or maybe it lasted another turn. As it is, it's not overly powerful, especially since you aren't even going to get this every combat, because not every combat you start off unnoticed. It is incredibly fun, however, and I really want to, jump out of cover and terrify someone because Batman is suddenly here to give them a beatdown. Quick Change is a simple feat that will make your life a lot easier. It requires that you're a master in deception, but it allows you to change between your identities in only 3 actions, rather than taking a whole minute. If you're legendary in deception, then it only takes a single action. This is really great if you're caught in the wrong identity and need to change quickly to try and resolve a situation, though you still need to change in a place where nobody can see you if you want to maintain the separation between your identities. Also, I really think that this should be a skill feat. Considering that it requires a skill proficiency and is level 7, it really does just feel like a skill feat, so I think it was just printed wrong. Rules as written, though, it isn't a skill feat, but ask your GM to make a judgment call on it. It just really gives off a skill feat sort of vibe to me. Speaking of deception skill feats that call for being a master in deception, Subjective Truth is another 7th level feat that requires being a master in deception. If you take Subjective Truth, then if you are ever magically compelled to tell the truth, you can say whatever you want as long as it is true from the perspective of your current identity. Now, if someone asks you in your social identity if you have ever met your Vigilante identity, you can tell them no, because by their very nature, you can literally never exist in the same spot as both your social and Vigilante identity. In real life, lie detector tests are complete bogus, and now the magical ones are too. The Many Guises feat gives you access to the ability to be pretty much ordinary. You get the ability to get another identity, like your social and your Vigilante identity, where you're just a normal person. This identity can be anyone of your ancestry, and you can change it anytime that you use this ability to enter that identity. You could be say a female bartender one time and a non-binary accountant the next. Also, you have a neutral alignment in this identity regardless of what your normal alignments are for your identities, meaning that you blend into crowds really, really well because that kind of magic can't find you. This identity does work a little bit differently from your others, though, as spells or abilities that try to figure out who you really are succeed if they beat your deception DC with a counteract check, rather than probably having to be 20 plus your deception DC. It's up to the GM which identity they find out if they manage to succeed, But if you don't stand out too much from the crowd as an ordinary person, the odds of them actually using one of those abilities on you specifically is fairly low. Also, if you use social or vigilante abilities in this identity, then you risk revealing yourself, as long as they are actually unusual abilities for an ordinary person to have. As a GM, I'd personally rule it as revealing that your vigilante identity has the ability to appear as anyone, but it's up to your GM how it works. Regardless of all of that though, the Many Guys' Feat gives you a lot of tools that you can use now. You can disappear into any crowd if given a little bit of time, and you can just be anyone and be everywhere. The Frightening Appearance feat at level 12 is a straight up upgrade to Startling Appearance, allowing you to attempt to demoralize anyone within 10 feet who you were also unnoticed to whenever you reveal yourself. Group demoralize effects are pretty much always good, especially on characters that likely have a good charisma. I've said it over and over again on this channel, but demoralize is a fantastic action, and being able to use it against multiple people at the same time is going to be great. You can only pull this off once in a fight most likely, and only if people are grouped up, but since, once you demoralize someone, they become temporarily immune for 10 minutes regardless, this is a great opening move. You have to be an expert in intimidation to be able to take it, which is a fair requirement for something called Frightening Appearance, but it does give you another bonus to your opening move of, Startling Appearance. Stunning Appearance is another upgrade to Startling Appearance, though this time it only affects the single target that you hit. Now, as long as their level is lower than yours, they are stunned 1 on a normal hit and stunned 2 on a critical hit. There's no save involved, but I still have a bit of an issue with this feat, especially with the exact way that it's worded. It doesn't have the incapacitation effect, but most incapacitation effects can at least impact creatures who are above your level. But with Stunning Appearance, it's impossible to stun creatures who are higher level than you. It's practically worse than Stunning Fist, despite it being a level 16 feat. Normally, Stunning Fist at least requires a saving throw, so, you can at least maybe stun 1 someone. Personally, I feel like this should be stunned 2 or 3 on a critical hit, and stunned 1 on a success. And if the target is higher level than you, then you reduce the stun value by 1 that is applied. So on a normal hit, they're not stunned at all. But on a critical hit, they are either stunned 1 or stunned 2. I don't think that this would be too strong, considering that you have to be completely unnoticed to get this to work, meaning that it will happen maybe once a fight, and only if you take a lot of precautions to be able to pull it off in the first place. The Vigilante archetype is right at the top of my list of archetypes that I want to play. I'm just waiting for the right campaign. The Vigilante was its own entire class in Pathfinder 1e, but I feel like it was actually improved when it got transitioned to merely being an archetype. Now you can have a Vigilante with abilities from any class, which makes it far more flexible and widens the possibilities substantially. I really love this archetype, and I especially like how it achieves all of that without being too bloated with the rules. This new Vigilante can represent so many different types of characters that I really like it. You can either be the stereotypical sort of superhero like, Superman or Batman, but you can also go pretty out there to create different types of characters. I'm just gonna, throw it out, but you can easily be a magical girl with this. If you pick up the Soulforger dedication, then it's pretty much writes itself. You have a secret identity with special powers, and you also can just pull out weapons and armor from nowhere. On the other end of the spectrum, you could always go for something like Dishonored in Corvo, where you become this masked sort of avenger of death and destruction. The Vigilante archetype is so flexible, and I really like what they've done with it, and I hope that you have found something that you like. Thanks for watching this. I hope that you've learned something today, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. I've been putting more and more time into these videos recently, so I hope that the quality has improved, although I do apologize if there's anything different about my voice today. I am recording this at about 6 in the morning right after I woke up, so I might have a bit of a morning voice going on. If you liked the video, I really appreciate it if you would comment down below about any ideas that you have for Vigilantes, or any feedback that you have. And I'd also, always appreciate a like on the video. Engagement from you guys helps me out a lot with recommending my videos around and telling me what you like and don't like, so any help would be appreciated. As always, if you want to see more of the stuff that I put out, then feel free to subscribe. Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.